And it's ego too, right? Well, yeah, the business is going to come because I'm going to be that good of a lawyer that people are just going to want to seek me out and they'll be willing to pay whatever price I want to give them.
Or I'll go to a bunch of happy hours, right? I'm really social. Like, people like me. We're going to get referrals. Like, this is going to be easy. Like, what are you talking about?
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into episode 45 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. My guest today is joining us all the way from South Florida. Manny Serra is a criminal defense attorney and the managing partner of the Rossen Law Firm, a firm that is rewriting the way criminal defense is practiced throughout Florida. Manny has spoken at conferences across the country, helping law firm owners to scale their practice and achieve better results, more happiness for them, their teams, and their clients. Manny, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast, my friend.
How are we doing, Scott? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm caught up in my cables over here. We just had about a 15-minute technological fun session, getting everybody set up with wires getting crisscrossed and sound going out and video, all that good stuff. But I also just found out that today's your birthday, Manny. Happy birthday, my man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a fun morning. Wife spoiled me with my daughter, and then my little 2-month-old son didn't wake up at 5 a.m. So it's been a good day so far.
Oh man, that's a fantastic day. No matter what happens the rest of the day, hey, you've already won.
For sure.
Awesome. All right, so you are the managing partner, and that means that you have to manage Adam Rosson, who is, many would say, unmanageable. So tell me this, how did you and Adam meet?
So technically, we met at Shama Madonna, which is a high school down here in South Florida in Hollywood. During basketball practice or basketball tryouts for JV basketball, he was coaching while he was in law school at UM. He went to Chaminade, played basketball at Chaminade, came back and coached. It was my sophomore year, and we had tryouts, and we had to try out on the outdoor courts because something was going on the indoor courts. I don't remember what, maybe varsity tryouts or something. And that's where we first met. And we bonded very, very quickly during that tryout because he didn't opt to report me to the school or anything of that nature when me and another tryout-ee, if you will, got into a physical fight because we were just talking some trash to each other and got into it. And we ended up being really good friends, not just me and Adam, but me and the other individual who ended up making the team and playing point guard with me. And we had lifelong friendships. And I think it was right then and there I knew that someone didn't take passion, competitiveness, toughness as a negative. It was a positive, and we turned it into a positive. We had a really, really good season that year with Adam. So that's how we met.
Awesome, man. And Adam seems like the kind of guy who loves a little trash talk. Am I right?
Yeah, it's welcome until it's not, right? I think the point of healthy conflict in a sports organization or locker room, right? That locker room talk, if you will, and understanding that there is going to be adversities. Things are going to be tough. If it's not, you're not challenging yourself. You're not hitting new ground. You're not making the world a better place. Nothing's supposed to be easy. If it's easy, something's wrong, right? And so I think understanding that there are going to be some tough times, some tough talks that need to be had. And as long as it's healthy and kind of alignment is there, it's cool. We'll talk through it.
Awesome. So you met Adam when you were a sophomore in high school. Did you have any thought of becoming a lawyer at that point in time?
I don't recall, to be quite frank. I know that people have always said, Manny, you should be a lawyer because, can talk well and, talk my way out of a box or whatever's going on. But no, quite frankly, no. I had no calling in life, so to speak. My calling in life was to play basketball, have a good time, get good grades, go to the University of Florida, and not piss off my mom and dad. That was really what I was doing back then in high school. It wasn't until really undergrad that I started to develop an affinity towards the law and towards understanding, like questioning things. Is that legal? Can we do that? Can that person do that? And generally I was questioning authority rather than authority, right? I was usually protecting, can someone do that? And I think one thing led to another. There was a lot of life experiences I've had along the way, and criminal defense is where I found my home.
And so you graduated from University of Florida. Where'd you go to law school?
Nova Southeastern, so it's a smaller little school down here. I got a scholarship, so I was able to save a bunch of money. I actually lived at home at my parents' house. They lived in Miami, and they were back and forth between Ormond Beach and Miami. Ormond Beach is kind of close to Daytona. So it was actually a really good setup for me. And so I'm South Florida, almost born and raised. The only time I ever lived elsewhere was in Gainesville at the University of Florida.
And when you decided that you wanted to go to law school, did you already know, hey, I want to be a criminal defense attorney, or were you wide open?
I kind of knew it, but the ugly truth about law school is sometimes it points you in a direction and chews you up and spits you out somewhere you shouldn't be, and you become someone you're not at heart. So for me, I was I'm going to get everything out of law school, try hard type of student. So I was on law review. I was on moot court. I was part of a bunch of organizations. I did a summer associateship. I clerked while I was in law school. I was a research assistant. So I really tried to get as kind of involved as I could in the legal community, not because I really wanted to get involved in the community, but I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my career going forward? And there was a lot of, I don't want to say envy, but there was a lot of intrigue, if you will, towards making money for me at that moment, because the loans were there. I wasn't really making money during undergrad. The market and the kind of financial crisis of the United States has just started to turn its corner there, because we're, 08 through 2011, that type of, turmoil that was happening.
Right.
So that kind of money insecurity or anxiety was there. So I actually took a bunch of paths to make the most money out of law school, and had a really good job out of law school where it was a really tough time to get a good job. And I was miserable. And I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do at heart, because I had worked in some criminal defense offices in the past. There was a buddy of my parents that I would intern for in the summers, and I actually had interned with Adam during some summers as well. And I loved it. But when you go to the public defender's office or state attorney's office back then, you were making peanuts. They get paid a little bit better now, but it wasn't something I was willing to do. I was letting money influence what I wanted to do, and it was just a horrible mindset. And I'm very happy to teach others of that, and I can't wait to teach my kids, hey, follow the passion, the money will follow, instead of follow the money, because the depression will follow if that happens.
Man, and that is something that needs to be preached to, I think, every law student out there. Law school, I don't know if it's the law schools, or I don't know if it's just the students, but there is this huge push towards big law, right? Big law is, everybody always knows what the first year big law associates are making in their area, and then probably across the United States. New York, you get out of law school and you're making $250,000 and this, that, and the other. And yes, but John Grisham didn't just make up what big law was like on the inside, right? He had some inside knowledge. I don't think he ever practiced big law. But I remember working into or walking into the law firm that I started with, which was not a big law firm, but it was a solid law firm. Loved it. It was fantastic. My very first day, they're going around introducing me to the various partners, and I get to this conference room, and I walk in and I'm introduced to one of the named partners and another partner, and there's just these bankers boxes about 6 feet high all the way around the conference room, just stacked up. And he's like, hey, you're the one from Baylor, right? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, go ahead and grab a seat. We got some documents to go through. And immediately I had these flashes of all of the John Grisham books that I'd read. And I was like, oh no, it's real. It's real. But thankfully I did enjoy that job. It was fantastic until I switched over to the good guys side, over on the plaintiff's side. But at what point did you really kind of come to that mind space of, what, the money just, it doesn't matter. What matters is really getting out there and pursuing that passion, and then the money will come?
It was the drive. And I mean drive literally. So driving from Miami to Weston, which is about like a 45-minute drive, then to Nova, the school. This is because remember I was working while I was in school, which was another 25-minute drive, then back home about an hour drive. And then after I had passed the bar, I had been working at this office as a lawyer, and I had been doing the drive over and over and over again. And it wasn't so much the drive that was bothering me, it was the content of the drive, meaning my thoughts, right? When you have that kind of and back then, it wasn't phones blowing up with GChat, Instagram all over. Yeah, that's so funny to talk about back then.
Exactly.
Years ago or so, but it wasn't as if when you were driving, you were on your phone the whole time. And I know I'm not condoning that. I know you guys are a personal injury firm.
Yes, please don't ever do that. Anyone
being on your phone, but we do it more and more, unfortunately, recently. But that drive was I'd be alone with my thoughts, or I would call at that point my girlfriend, who ended up being my wife, or some of my really good friends, and I would be complaining, to use a nice politically correct word,
right?
And I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, there's no good feels from this. And I'm not going to do this forever. And I think I realized that it's tenable maybe for the next 5-10 years at most, but I'm not going to plant my roots somewhere that is not long-term. I've always had an idea of whatever I want to do, I'm all in. I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm not here to make a buck here and then move over to here. I love being all in everything I'm doing. Why? Because don't you want to wake up every day and know that everything you're doing is a small investment in a grander, bigger picture, whether that be for clients, for a firm, for whatever it is, a team. And when I realized once I realized there was a cap on what I was doing there, it was over. I was out and I was looking elsewhere.
And so you go from gunner in law school to essentially big law. Once you decide to leave there, what was your all-in moment? What was your all-in moment? Did you go to the public defender's office from there?
I did. So I was interviewing at the public defender's office, and I was going to interview at the state attorney's office only because so many people recommended I either work at either. Adam had actually recommended I work as the state attorney. I was like, nah, man, I don't want to prosecute people. I want to defend people. So yeah, the state attorney's job, is obviously the illustrious of the two between the state attorney and the public defender's office. You get to have the badge with you. You're a prosecutor. People just gravitate more towards that, and people don't even know that public defenders are real lawyers. Sometimes they think it's a law student or someone, I don't know. But that was never for me. I never wanted to prosecute people. I always wanted to defend people. I believe very strongly in our Constitution. I believe very strongly in the idea that someone has to police the police. And if the police are afraid that someone's policing them, then are they really policing them, right? Because ultimately they want law and order. They want things to make sure, ideally, they want to make sure that things are going according to how the law is set out. So if one of their own kin is violating the law by invading someone's right to privacy or not abiding by someone's Fifth Amendment right to remain silent or whatever it is, don't you want that person held accountable? Isn't that really what law enforcement is? So I do consider us a form of law enforcement, which is kind of crazy, as criminal defense. And the all-in moment for me was truly during my interview there. And it was a big interview. It was a time where everyone wanted to work. There was a big L-shaped conference room. There was probably 30 people interviewing.
Wow.
And you had to do this closing argument, to really make yourself, my class was a class of 3 people. So of those 30 people, only 3 people got the job. And I lit up giving that closing argument. And I had worked, doing a lot of transactional law before and doing some motion practice, not much, but never really had the real opportunity to give a closing argument. Because even in moot court or National Trial Association, all that kind of stuff, you're not really feeling it, the real pressure. And I thrived. I felt alive, felt so alive. And I knew, and I don't mean to be conceited, but I knew I was better than every single person there. And you kind of have to have that mentality
right.
of, I'm the best around, to be, an alpha in the courtroom. And so I knew that's where I wanted to start watering those roots, right? And seeing how far this can go.
Okay, you just touched on something hugely important, especially in the trial lawyer world, right? Whether you're doing it on the criminal defense side, the prosecutor side, any kind of civil trial, and that's that confidence. I know you're a huge Tim Grover fan. What is it about Tim Grover that speaks to you in relation to having that alpha confidence?
So we actually did a book club with Winning by Tim Grover. Winning and Relentless are 2 amazing books. If no one's ever read them right now, take a second, write it down on a notepad, go into Amazon, order them. They will change your life if you're looking for Kaizen, that constant improvement of yourself. It's going to show you another level of productivity, of alpha, of just complete badassery, if you will.
Well, and I'll say, let me jump in here real quick, Manny. This is a different book than what you've ever read. This is not a motivational book. This is not a coach talk book. This is completely different beast. So go ahead, Manny.
Yeah, he even says in there, this is not a self-help book. If you're looking for motivation, if you're looking for me to tell you what to do, find another book. You're looking in the wrong place. He doesn't believe in motivation. He believes that this should all be inert. And if it's not inert, you're going to do some more soul searching to figure out why you're doing what you're doing. And he'll give you examples of what Michael Jordan did, what Kobe Bryant did, which were his clients. And we book clubbed the book. And we had just finished winning about a week ago. And my legal assistant was talking with me. She's actually the staff manager. And she's like, most people would think Tim Grover's crazy. Most people would think this is just kind of, guy's an a-hole. And then we came to the realization, it's like, yeah, but most people aren't true winners, right? Most people truly have never really reached this level of excellence. And we're still aspiring to get there. Every day we're trying to get to that kind of a level. And that book and Tim Grover, everything that he stands for and everything he's done in his career is just very inspiring to me, because it always, whenever I read his material, it always shows me there's another level out there that I'm not there yet. And I don't think I ever will be. It's kind of insane, some of the stuff he puts out there. But it's always kind of that carrot in front of you that makes me get up in the morning and try a little bit harder if I'm sitting at my desk and it's 5:55 and I got to get home. But all it takes is 10 more minutes to finish this. Let me just finish this. I got to finish it. Don't leave it for tomorrow. Just that little change. If you do that over and over again, right, 4 or 5 days a week, you're jumping ahead of the competition leaps and bounds.
Yeah, and a lot of people will hear that example that you just gave, or they'll read the book and be like, there is zero work-life balance with this guy, right? Everything is chasing that horizon, chasing that carrot. And so he lives in a very dangerous territory, as did his clients. But at the same time, they were some of the best athletes that have ever played the game. And so there's a bit of craziness and there's a bit of, no, you have to, or I guess imbalance in getting to that point. And so that was your all-in moment. You gave the closing statement. You got the job. How did you know that that was your passion?
So there was a very, very defined moment in my life where there was a run-in with law enforcement where the officer was not in the right, and I knew he wasn't in the right, and he was abusing one of my friends, and I stepped in to stop it when I didn't have to. I could have stood by and just been a passerby and let the situation kind of play out how it is. I have a big future in front of me. I've never been in trouble in my life. Hell, I never even gotten a demerit. Should have, but I've talked my way out of it a few times, right? I had a perfect record, if you will, quote unquote. And something inside me, I just had enough of seeing this officer act the way he did. And I stood up to the officer. I questioned the officer, questioned him a bit more than I should. And, unfortunately, he ended up arresting me, believe it or not. And I spent 14 hours in a Broward County jail cell for trespassing, even though I never trespassed. I told him he didn't own the sidewalk. He didn't like that. Put me on the hood of a car, said a bunch of really mean and nasty things to me because my name is Manny Serra-Jovenich. So he essentially was thinking I was extremely Hispanic and throwing all kinds of racial slurs at me. It was crazy, like stuff that you hear clients tell you as a public defender and even in private practice. And unless you actually lived it, you think, yeah, okay, all right, okay, yeah, I'm sure they did that, right? Whatever. Everyone's kind of calling, playing the race card, or the officers are abusive, or whatever. I lived it, and on a smaller scale, everything turned out fine. Went to law school. This happened when I was an undergrad going towards law school. But it was at that moment truly where I was like, you know what? Someone's got to police these guys. Like someone has to do the right thing. And when I found myself able to stand up and put my career and my record, if you will, at risk to fight an injustice that I saw, and my friends that were there that night will tell you that it was like a new person had come out of me that they had never seen before. And so it was I learned a lot. It was a life-changing moment. I'm very embarrassed by it for my family, only because my mom and dad just didn't know how to handle the situation. But it showed me, and I had a really bad experience with the lawyer that we hired. I don't want to really get into that too much because I don't like to tarnish anything, any names or anything.
Sure. But
I can only tell you that it did not live up to expectations for a first-time offender who'd never done anything wrong, who dad's a dentist, mom's a dental hygienist, trying to just figure out, heads from tails from this. No one's ever been in trouble. The world's ending. Am I going to go to prison for a municipal ordinance violation, a city violation of trespass, even though I didn't? So it was just a lot of uncertainties. And for me to be able to land that plane for people confidently, holding their hand, is just a joy every single day. And it's what gets me up in the morning. It's what I care about. It's why our lawyers respect what we do, is that we treat those municipal ordinance trespass cases the same way we treat the murder cases. And I don't mean that, facetiously. I truly mean that we overturn every stone. And under my watch, anyone who works for me is going to overturn every stone to make sure that when we're looking across the table, we tell the mother, the father, or the client, or whoever it is, that we did absolutely everything we could to beat your case. And here are the options you have, and not feed them a bunch of BS, which a lot of the competition unfortunately does. So that really came from an organic experience of mine, which I actually said I would never really tell until my parents had passed, because I know it would embarrass them. But I know that they know that I found a really good place in life, and that it's one of those things where I'm not a bad guy. We know, like it was just an incident where I couldn't keep my mouth closed anymore because it was just a really nasty night. And I learned a lot, and it changed my life. And I like to think it changed a bunch of other people's lives, because I've been able to touch them in an appropriate way through their criminal defense journey, and put them onto a path to their best future.
Yeah, and it's amazing how certain things happen within our lives that just completely shape or reshape our perspectives and put us where we end up in our careers. I never had any plans of going to law school. I've told this story several times on the podcast, but here I am, a lawyer, right? And certain things that I've gone through, my kidney transplant, I can sit there and really identify with clients on certain aspects of their care. Whenever we have a client go in and all of a sudden they're facing the surgical procedure, and I can empathize with them, and that everything that goes into that. Okay, well, you got to plan off time for work for this. You got to make sure that the kids are covered. You're not going to get paid for this time unless you have PTO, this, that, and the other. And having that experience, I think, completely changes the way that you interact with them. And similarly, people in our office have all dealt with different things in their lives that give them a unique perspective in helping our clients. And similar to you, maybe not to the same extent, but when our clients come in, a lot of times they're scared. They don't know what to expect. They don't understand the process. They're worried about getting stuck with a ton of medical bills, or not being able to work anymore, or they can't get anywhere because they don't have a car because it was destroyed. And just being able to sit across from them, confidently explain the process, and just take that burden off their shoulders and put them at ease, man, that is a huge, huge benefit that we can provide.
Yeah. And I think even when you had discussed with me, the health issues that you had, I mean, the way that you spoke was so genuine, right? It was so real, and you weren't selling me anything. I just knew, like, man. And that was one of the first times that we had gotten to know each other. I think we were in an Uber going somewhere to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a big SUV. We were with some other people as well in DC area. And I realized, like, Scott's a good guy. Like that broke a lot of ice for me. I'm a very distrusting person at first, and then I gain trust as it goes along. I've known that about myself. I've learned that. And so I can only imagine how your clients feel, because the most overused word, and I didn't used to hear it growing up much, but I've been hearing it quite a bit at these conferences we go to and marketing things, is empathy. I think empathy is starting to become that word where I'm rolling my eyes, because I think people don't really know the true meaning of it.
Right.
And I think you only can really get true empathy, as close to possible as true empathy, from having lived similar experiences to others, because you can't fake it. You cannot fake it. It sticks out like a sore thumb if you try to fake that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you practiced for the public defender's office a little bit. How did you end up with Adam?
So I had left the PD because I wanted to try to, and this is again, right, one of those things where I left. I love the PD, but I wasn't making much money at all. I was there for almost 3 years. I wanted to make some money, and everyone tells you can't make money in criminal defense. In fact, I was out last night celebrating my birthday a little bit with some buddies, and the conversation was, even in law school, they remembered saying, like, yeah, like on the list of areas of law, when you look at the average salary, the average income, criminal defense was like towards the bottom.
Right.
And so you really had to go as a passion project and love it. You don't go for the money. And I realized that, okay, what if I want to do something else? Maybe I need to learn another area, because I know I want to do criminal defense. Like, I know it. And your magical realm of personal injury, was something I was like, all right, let me look at it. This funny money you see the PI guys have with the big old and so I tried some of that with first party property damage at a firm. They were great. I learned from them. There was a big hurricane that passed through South Florida where you can actually claim damage for it. The law was really good. They changed it, unfortunately, since then. But again, I found myself in a world where it didn't seem right. I wasn't super stoked on life.
Right.
I was, and that was the last time I go, all right, it's that stupid money bug again. But I learned quickly this time. Yeah, so I obviously I found the indicators of chasing money again, time to leave, and those indicators were dead on, and I acted on them quickly. I didn't spend a bunch of time at this other location post the public defender's office. I was quick to make a turnaround, and it really helped because at my wedding, Adam started planting these little seeds in my ear of, hey, we should talk. I'd be really interested in bringing you onto the firm. He was trying to grow and expand. It was just him at that point. And so one thing led to another. We had a few discussions, and here we are almost 6 years later, rocking and rolling, a firm of 20 people or so, 6 lawyers, adding more to the firm, helping more people throughout the community, and trying to scale at a rate that is tenable, and also never losing sight of the number one mission of this firm, and it's to help good people when bad things happen. And anytime I'm on a case, anytime I'm reviewing anything related to a client or potential client coming in, I treat it truly as if it's my case or a family member's case. And that is the number one objective of our firm, is to make sure that people are put on a path towards their better future. And if we're doing that, we're doing A-OK. Everything else will fall in line. So I truly, truly do mean that. And that's why this place has worked out for me, and why I've been here long term, and why I want to continue as much as I can, right, to bring that fire every day.
And so your career has transitioned over the years, as mine has. Right? I started off as a solo at Snellings Law, and eventually kind of Rossio joined, and then we had other lawyers join along with other team members. And so my day-to-day has transitioned dramatically from back when I was in the weeds, handling every aspect of every case. And I know yours has as well. You are now the, give me your title again, is it firm manager? Managing partner. So how has that transition been for you? And have you kind of developed a second passion almost related to running the law firm and growing the law firm?
Yeah. It never really has gone away from me, the obligation and responsibility for the legal product. So even when I have fewer cases in my name, technically, I still feel it's kind of like I'm babysitting, right? If you've had kids, you guys understand, right? Like you can be working on your iPad and your kids are self-sufficient enough to be doing X, Y, Z, but you always have to be looking, right? You always have to have that spidey sense that's able to pick up if something's going wrong, or, they're watching a show that maybe shouldn't be for them at the age, whatever it is, right? I'm talking about parent. I'm making a parallel or analogy, pardon me, here, because even though I'm focused on the business management or the business development of the firm, I'm looking at metrics. We're running off of our CRM. We're looking for better opportunities. We're having, EOS L10s, and I'm involved in so many. We're bringing on new people, et cetera, right? I role as an integrator at one point, then, intake, sales attorneys, all this stuff. My eye never leaves the mother cub, right, if you will, or the mother lion to the cub of the legal. My eye doesn't leave it. It can't. Why? Because I feel so strongly that is the lifeblood of our firm, to making sure people are getting everything we promise them in the marketing, in the sales room, and that promise that we're going to overturn every stone. Can't make any guarantees, but you can certainly let clients know we're going to do the work.
Right.
And so, yes, Scott, to answer your question, I have developed a second passion, if you will, for metrics, systems, things of that nature. But I always will have an eye or attention on the legal product, because that's what keeps me up at night, right? A lot of times we go to the conferences and talk about what keeps you up at night, right? What are some of the stressors you have?
Yeah.
Every time, first thing that comes to my head is the person we just promised to do X, Y, Z. I need to make sure we do X, Y, Z, and then call them to let me know what X, Y, Z, and explain what X, Y, Z was to them, and go above and beyond and over communicate with our clients. Because I'm not being facetious or being, melodramatic or anything of that nature. They are family once they sign up with us, because their case can affect 3 generations deep of their family if it's mismanaged.
Wow. Yeah. That's a very scary perspective right there. I spend a large majority of my day too, mother bearing as well. My law partner, Rocio, she's our basically head of legal, but I can't just completely let everything go, right? I'm still involved in the strategy, and I'm still involved in going through the cases on my feed. We use Filevine, and there's a feed of everything that happens throughout the day. And I have a couple of parts of my day segmented to go through that and make sure, all right, yeah, this box is checked. This is looking good. This could be a potential problem in the future. Let me just check in or pick Rocio's brain on this or how to handle this. In fact, we had our attorney roundtable this morning. We have a meeting each week where the attorneys get together and discuss cases, which I love. It's one of my favorite parts of the week because I get to be involved and I get to help, with strategy, and I get to hear all of the other attorneys' strategy and input, and just really gets me fired up just to see the caliber of our team. They're thinking of stuff that I never would have thought of in a million years. And, with the gray hair that I have, I'm being able to bring up some stuff too and teach a little bit. So it's really exciting for sure. So do you have any kind of a business background, or are you having to learn all of the management, all of the metrics, all of the analysis on your own?
So funny. I have a business background. My business background is my dad ran a dental business in South Florida for 25 years, and he's a hell of a dentist. Unbelievable. A bunch of awards, and actually got a very big position at the VA where he took it on as a passion project when he semi-retired. But my background in business is hearing him and my mom basically ran his front desk. She was a dental hygienist. Hearing them, the trials and tribulations of them trying to figure this out on their own without a background and not having an affinity towards business, and seeing over life, my dad telling me and talking to me of like, guys, I'm so sorry I was the way I was. I didn't know how to handle it. And my dad's such a great guy. And just him having the awareness level years later to still apologize. Like, Dad, don't apologize. You're working your butt off, man. Thank you for everything. We're the one that needs to say thank you. But that's my business background, just seeing my dad run his practice with my mom and having them pull their hair out, trying to figure this out and stressing over the littlest things and not doing it to scale, right? Not having something like EOS in their life, right? Yeah. Not having a great legal marketing to use something that we've obviously been a part of in the past. Those are all tools that can help you scale your business and understand and help you on the journey you're going through. But that was my business background. That's all. Other than that, I've worked jobs here or there on the summer. I was always working. I am a workaholic. I was always working no matter what. Even when I was in high school, I was working. So, yeah.
Well, and I tell you what, those dinner time conversations or just hearing your parents talk about those small business problems, that was probably worth its weight in gold, because you knew firsthand, like, what are the biggest stressors? Okay, it's cash flow. It's not having enough help to service your dental patients. It's, making rent. It's how do we get more people into the dental chair? Basically, all of the major tenets of business, you had a firsthand knowledge of just listening to them talk.
Right. And a family of 4. I had a brother, and we were so active, right? I mean, we played every sport under the sun. And sometimes my brother played in Broward on a travel league, and I played in Miami on a travel league. And so seeing my parents have to even work logistics on that, seeing that they always put family first to me, especially as I'm growing up and seeing now the balance is really starting to not really be a balance, but maybe a commingling, right? Going back to some of the Tim Grover stuff. I now realize how hard it was for them to do. And I'm just so appreciative of everything they've done in my life. And it being my birthday today and talking to them on FaceTime today was just one of those things where it's just very apropos, to have this conversation we're having right now on today.
Man, that's so cool. And so the other thing too is you got a firsthand look at your dad, who's a service provider, also try to run a business. And that's what Adam was facing, I assume, before you came on. And it's almost impossible to do.
Yeah, in law school they tell you, and it's so funny because you hear it as this tale or anecdote, but it's real as real can be. When you hear, I had a business class, a business law class, how to run a small business, and it was a late night class I remember taking, and it was one of my favorite ones because the guy was talking about how he's running his firm and growing his firm as an adjunct, and it was funny because he's like, they don't tell you this in law school, but you think you're a great lawyer. You hang your shingle outside and the clients are going to come. You guys ever think about marketing? Do you ever think about payroll? Do you ever think about answering phones? Do you ever think about the website? Do you think about social media? Do you think about who's going to cover the phones when you're in court? All of that is not really taught in any academic setting.
No.
And so it's funny that you hear, oh, you're just going to hang your shingle out front and they're going to come. And that's the anecdote that I think a lot of lawyers, if not all lawyers, have heard at some point. And that's why I think a lot of people are just herded into big law, because it's the safety, security of, yeah, I got to work 6 days a week nonstop and billables and all that stuff. But that's kind of what the best lawyers do, even though that's not the truth. There are other opportunities, just the eyes aren't opened and you're not taught about it. So thinking back onto that class really is an eye-opening moment. What was that? A few years, 10 years later, I don't even know, I'm dating myself. And now it's just like, man, that adjunct professor really had a great lesson there. And I'm sure all of us went in one ear, right out the other, right?
Zero reference point.
Yeah.
Zero reference. Well, and it's ego too, right? Well, yeah, the business is going to come because I'm going to be that good of a lawyer that people are just going to want to seek me out and they'll be willing to pay whatever price I want to give them.
Or I'll go to a bunch of happy hours, right? I'm really social. Like, people like me. We're going to get referrals. Like, this is going to be easy. Like, what are you talking about? So.
Yeah, it's so funny. One of the reasons I joined Great Legal Marketing, which is the group that Manny and I, that's where we met, was because I had zero business background. Zero. I was a psychology major. I really enjoyed that, but I would have been a terrible psychologist. And so ended up in law school. And whenever I started the first firm with my former law partner, he kind of took care of a lot of the business type stuff. But whenever I started my own, I really was like, okay, I have zero business background. And so I'm going to learn everything that there is to know about business. I'm going to figure out a way to give myself an MBA. And it started with finding mentors, with reading more books than I can imagine. And then I found GLM too through my friend, Russell Button. And once I got in there, it was that kind of take the blinders off moment of, oh, hold on now. There's way more to this than practicing law and then working 12-hour days trying to grow your firm. There's way more planning. There's way more structure. There's so many different things you can do to grow something that you love.
I think of organizations like, let's just use GLM, right? Just to use an analogy. It's a gateway drug. It is just, you take it and you're like, whoa, eye-opening, right? The summits or whatever, where you want to get involved in. Then you hear about EOS, right? Then you hear about
masterminds.
You hear about all these different ways to run your business and CRMs and funnels. And it's one thing leads to another. And it's a great journey to be on. Like if you're Alice in Wonderland, it's awesome. It's a really fun side to law that no one else tells you about.
Yeah. And to your previous point, law school, I don't think I ever heard anything about any business practice. One thing that I was on Charlie Mann's podcast, What They Don't Teach You in Law School is what it's named.
Charlie.
Yeah. And he always starts off with the question, what do they not teach you in law school? And for me, it was the power of and how to build a network. There was zero emphasis on building your network. If there had been, I would still be in touch with every single person I went to law school with, every person that I used to work with, and the contacts that I made back then. It just never, I knew it was important. You got to have, your network, but it was never a priority.
I feel as though, I'm hearing you say that, and I'm trying to put together. So my wife was on SBA, so the Student Bar Association or something like that. It was like student government. I wasn't
Student Bar
involved.
Association.
Yeah, clearly I wasn't involved. But I remember the events and going and having discussions with Adam. And hey, that's where you're going to meet friends. You're going to contact. You're going to make networks. You're going to make your network and all of these things. And to me, that actually came. And I'll point you a little bit. To me, and look, it's just me. That came naturally. Like my whole life, I'm always building a book, and not a book of business, but I believe so much in humanity, if you will, right? Where I think people I love people. I love making friends. I love hearing life experiences. I like being outgoing. I'm not a full extrovert, but I really, really like to speak to people and learn about them. And sometimes I think it's to my detriment, where I want to make sure everyone around me is having a good time or everyone around me is connected. I'm a very big connector, if you will, of like different sects of friends. So I've always had that in me, actually, to try to bring people together and kind of get that book of, I don't want to say book of business, that's just kind of the term of art, but get that book of contacts together, because I believe the world's a better place when you're working together. Like I think solo lawyers, I love being a part of a team, right? I would never want to just be solo. I want to be part of a team. I want to have someone to work with. I want someone to bounce ideas off, someone to feel accomplishment with, right? It's just like, I was raised playing sports, and almost every single sport I played was a team sport. I don't even remember individualized sport. I wasn't even that big into tennis or golf back then. So it's just kind of in my nature.
Yeah. I grew up in both individual and team, and you're right. When you have an individual accomplishment, it's really cool, but there's nobody to high five, right? Maybe your coach or other people that are playing the same sport. I don't know. But when it's the team, man, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more gratifying and fulfilling.
There's just a dynamic. If not, I don't know. Teach their own. Look, I'm not judging anyone who wants to do things their way, because it's your life. Go for it. It's just, for me, I've always felt a lot of gratification doing things with a unit.
Right. All right. So you're now in this position. What all are you doing with Adam, and how do you guys manage that separation of responsibilities?
So we use EOS, right? Traction by Gino Wickman is a must read for anyone trying to grow their business.
That may have come up a time or two on this show.
Yeah, I've watched a few of them, but I got to comment on it because it truly, to be quite honest, it's a theme, and we're not getting paid. Not a paid sponsorship of EOS or Traction or anything. That's a
good idea, though. I need to reach out to them.
You should send them a reel of all the stuff that everything that's come through your channel. But honestly, guys, anyone listening to this who's trying to find some vision, find some structure, if you don't have core values of your office, if you don't have an organizational chart, if you don't have anyone to act on, let's say 70% of the ideas you have in your brain, got to start some system to build a real structure, a base, if you will, for all your hopes, dreams, and aspirations for your business, your firm, or whatever it is. And Traction by Gino Wickman, like I said, it will help you. It's EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It just breaks down a really good dynamic of players in your business. As a visionary and integrator, kind of started off, and then you build it down. And that's been amazing for us. There are times where there's frustration with it, right? Where Adam and myself both share the trait of core value number 3 at our firm is take action. So it is frustrating sometimes off of the logistics side of it, and me being an integrator going, well, let's wait to park it. Let's talk about it in IDS, identify, discuss, and solve an issue that pops up.
Right.
And we get once a week, right? Or let's add it to a scorecard metric or anything of that nature. And sometimes the inertia in us is just like stopped because of that.
Yeah.
So we have really kind of abandoned some of the full-blown traditional pillars or concepts of it. But originally, early on, we were very, very religious to it, and it really, really helped us. So I think that's the best that I can say in terms of managing responsibility, living within roles, having an identified organizational chart. And if you have a big team, you want people to know really what you're doing, because we've all been at offices, at least I have, okay, especially when you were in big law stock, where you go, what is that guy even doing? He's in his office all day, right? And there's just this feeling of like management or other people what do they even do?
Yeah.
And for there to be transparency and to see all the changes and to have traction, no pun intended, of your business and see what's growing and have communication with your team is a tremendous tool to build camaraderie as well. Because if not, I'm telling you, it's just human nature. People build envy. People fill their brains with other thoughts that go in there, depending on who the person is. Not everyone's the same. So it's really great to make sure everyone's on the same page of the team, And Traction has done that for us.
Yeah. And we started off much the same way, trying to abide by all the different seats and methods and whatnot. And we modify it. We modify it to what works for us. I mean, we're not trying to win the Traction game, as our implementer says. We're trying to create a successful business, law firm, and provide amazing service. All right, last question, Manny. Give me 3 of your favorite books. Can be fiction,
Ooh.
nonfiction, doesn't matter. We've already talked about two, so I'm going to exclude those. No Tim Grover.
I can't say Tim Grover.
Can't say Tim Grover.
Okay. All right. So let me see if I can get some different genres. Well, The Alchemist, right, is something that I've read probably 6 or 7 times. So I'm going to put that up there. I haven't read it in a while.
I just finished that book. I just posted on LinkedIn the other day about it. It was, really good.
First time reading it?
Never read it before.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember reading it for the first time on a cruise ship when I was, maybe in undergrad or law school. Wow. Cool. Well, I'm happy you read it. What did you think of it?
It would have been something I never would have picked up. But once I actually listened to this one because Jeremy Irons did the narration. It was fantastic. And about 2 chapters in, I was hooked. I think I listened to it pretty much straight through.
I've read it so many times, highlighted all around. It is something where every time I read it, I pick up something new. I need to read it again. It's been quite some time. So that's one. I'll go with that. Cutting Tim Grover out really hurts. Atomic Habits, even though I've never read it front to cover, cover to cover, I picked it up, I put it down, I picked it up. Every time I read it, and I go backwards and reread chapters, and I bookmark chapters. I've read the whole thing. It's just I never read it front to end. I've always kind of gone back and reread things. It's just, to me, it just does it for me, right? It fires off the neurons. It's there. So Atomic Habits. And then 3, I'll go, this is off the beaten path, right? The Tale of Dunk and Egg. It is a book by George R.R. Martin. So it's the Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, if you're an HBO watcher. It's a side tale of this, a prequel, if you will. I think he's eventually going to make a story on it. And it is the best writing I've ever seen a writer do, because George R.R. Martin writes just these massive, long books where he's family trees and you're getting lost in all of this world. I love it, but I can see why people don't.
Sure.
But then The Tale of Dunk and Egg, it's about there's 3 different stories there. And he writes somewhere, it almost feels like a rated R Harry Potter. And I love it. So it's a really, really, but it's lighthearted. It doesn't, You're not going to get, sick of reading it. So I'm going to go with that for my 3rd.
Awesome. Manny, thank you so much for joining us today. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Driven Crowd Podcast. We'll see you next time.